Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right into it. Today, we're completely reframing how you look at your next big job interview. We're not treating it like a simple social test anymore. No, we're looking at it as a high-stakes cognitive and neurovascular stress test. Because here's the thing, if you want to perform at your absolute peak, memorizing your resume just isn't going to cut it. You literally have to biologically ground yourself to handle the pressure. So we're going to approach interview prep through the lens of nutritional neuroscience, breaking down the actual lab data so you can use it out there in the real world.
I want to walk you through our methodology today, almost like a proper lab briefing. So here's our roadmap. We'll start with the interview cognition hypothesis, then move into neurometabolism and fluid dynamics, followed by the splanchnic blood shift. After that, we'll look at a really cool clinical trial on caffeine and theanine, break down the 90-minute protocol, and wrap it all up with on-site executive function.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the interview cognition hypothesis.
Now, here's a wild stat for you. Your brain consumes 20% of your body's entire energy budget. That's huge, right? Especially considering it only makes up about 2% of your physical mass. What this means is that your brain requires incredibly precise fueling to operate when you're under the gun. And since the brain relies almost exclusively on glucose for fuel, even a tiny fluctuation in your blood sugar levels is going to have immediate, profound effects on your cognitive clarity and how fast you can process information.
Moving right along to part 2, neurometabolism and fluid dynamics.
So, to articulate those complex answers lightning fast during an interview, we really need to optimize some specific chemical messengers in the brain, namely dopamine for problem solving and acetylcholine for retrieving those key memories of your past accomplishments. And the best part? You can directly modulate these through your diet to totally ground yourself before you even walk into the room. For instance, consuming tyrosine, which you can get from poultry and eggs, actually aids in synthesizing dopamine, giving you much-needed cognitive flexibility under stress. On the flip side, phosphatidylcholine, found in egg yolks, synthesizes acetylcholine. Have you ever totally blanked on a specific metric or a great story from a past job when a hiring manager puts you on the spot? Well, a lack of these specific nutrients literally makes it harder for your brain's filing cabinet to open up when you need it most.
Now, the clinical data we have on fluid dynamics is absolutely striking. If you drop just 1 to 2% into mild dehydration, it pushes your serum osmolality over 290. And what does that do? It literally shrinks your brain cells and slows down interneuronal communication. Basically, when your blood becomes too concentrated because you haven't drank enough water, it acts like a sponge and draws water straight out of your brain tissue. This cuts down your nerve-activated blood flow and just heavily delays signal transmission. So, in plain terms, your reaction time tanks and your anxiety spikes.
That brings us to section 3, the splanchnic blood shift.
You know that feeling when you eat a massive meal and just want to take a nap? That's because your autonomic nervous system is shifting into parasympathetic dominance. It's pooling blood in your gut to help with digestion, which literally drains cognitive resources right away from your brain. This blood shift is supposed to help you absorb nutrients, but it leaves you dealing with postprandial somnolence, which, let's be real, is just the fancy clinical term for a food coma. You feel sluggish, your reaction times slow down, and your mental sharpness just plummets. Guys, you absolutely cannot afford to have your blood pooled down in your digestive tract when you desperately need it up in your prefrontal cortex.
Okay, moving to part 4. Let's look at a fascinating clinical trial on caffeine and theanine.
So in this specific clinical model, researchers gathered 24 participants. Half were habitual caffeine drinkers, and the other half rarely touched the stuff. They wanted to test the neuropharmacological effects of 75 milligrams of caffeine mixed with 50 milligrams of L-theanine. This actually mimics the natural ratio you'd find in a cup or two of regular tea. And they were super rigorous about the methodology to rule out any wildcards. They had everyone do a 12-hour overnight fast to get a completely clean baseline, ran some initial cognitive tests, gave them exactly a 30-minute absorption window for the treatment, and then hit them with an intense battery of post-dose tests. This included the Stroop test, which is basically designed to intentionally stress test your attention span and reaction times.
But here is the really cool part. To actually peek inside the brain during all this, the researchers used NIRS. This tracks functional activation by measuring real-time changes in cerebral blood flow. Essentially, near-infrared spectroscopy shoots 2 safe wavelengths of light right through the skull to measure exactly how much oxygenated blood is rushing to the prefrontal cortex when the brain is put under heavy cognitive load. It literally gave the scientists a real-time live-action window into the neurovascular coupling of every participant. And what did the data show? Absolute synergistic magic.
See, caffeine all by itself actually constricts your cerebral blood flow. It's called vasoconstriction, which is just a fancy word for the tightening of your blood vessels. But when you add L-theanine into the mix, it completely eradicates that restriction. It totally wipes out those annoying caffeine jitters, all while actively improving your attention and response times. It's a brilliant balancing act. The caffeine ramps up the chemical messengers for arousal, while the L-theanine acts as this amazing calming anchor. It essentially clears out the background neurological noise so you can actually focus. It's literally the perfect biochemical recipe for alert relaxation. It keeps you entirely grounded but highly responsive.
So how do we use this? Let's get into Section 5, the 90-minute protocol.
Think of this timeline as your personal operational framework for interview day. First, eating exactly 90 minutes prior ensures that the heavy lifting of gastric emptying is totally finished. That means you completely avoid that splanchnic blood pooling we talked about earlier. Then, at the 30-minute mark, that's when you take your caffeine-theanine stack so it hits maximum efficacy right when you shake hands. By having that meal an hour and a half before you step into the room, your body has enough time to absorb the nutrients, cross the blood-brain barrier, and actually start synthesizing that crucial dopamine and acetylcholine.
But listen, the key takeaway here is what you eat. That 90-minute meal absolutely must be complex carbohydrates. Think whole grain toast or oats, and solid proteins like eggs or poultry. You need that slow, sustained release of glucose. If you grab a high glycemic pastry on the way to the office, you're going to trigger a massive surge of insulin. And what happens next? That insulin violently drives your blood glucose down, plunging you into a nasty sugar crash right at the exact moment the interviewer asks you to describe your biggest weakness. You have to stabilize your glucose to protect your executive function. No exceptions.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, on-site executive function.
Okay, so you're in the building. To maintain your peak executive function and really physically ground yourself on site, you need to be microdosing water to stave off mild dehydration. You also want to lean on a handful of walnuts or almonds. These provide the amino acids lysine and arginine, which have been clinically shown to reduce situational stress. Now, don't go chugging a gallon of water and overhydrate yourself. Just take small, consistent sips to keep that interneuronal communication firing rapidly. And if you're staring down a grueling 3 to 4 hour gauntlet of back-to-back interviews, keeping a little bag of almonds in your pocket acts as a vital physical anchor. It ensures your blood sugar doesn't crater and keeps your baseline anxiety totally manageable.
As you can see, maintaining your biological baseline isn't just some generic health recommendation. It's a completely vital strategy for preserving your working memory and your psychomotor speed. Think of it this way. Every little physiological dip you experience is a cognitive tax. And that's a tax you simply cannot afford to pay when you're in the hot seat trying to make a flawless first impression.
Look, if you really want that competitive edge, you have to start treating your body like the high-performance laboratory it actually is. The methodology we've covered today is super clear, right? Stabilize your glucose, optimize those neurotransmitters, balance your fluid dynamics, and leverage synergistic compounds to maintain that perfect state of alert relaxation. So, let me leave you with this. Are you preparing your brain's neurovascular state as meticulously as you are preparing your resume? Thank you so much for exploring the science of peak performance with me in this explainer. It's time to start applying this protocol. Biologically ground yourself and actually take control of your cognitive potential.